Hello listeners, welcome to the newest instalment of Favourite Fight, the part of the show of the podcast of My Girlfriend Doesn't Like Robots. This episode was alright. It wasn't too bad. The fight card, it's not too bad. It was not as good as last week's, but better than some weeks we've had. Some fights were a bit sort of, you could call that straight away, like Sub-Zero, Sporkinok, Beta vs Rusty. Like, unless they put that in for a major upset, it was only really like, especially Sporkinok Sub-Zero. That wasn't going to be a fight at all, really, because Sub-Zero's on 1-1, and one of their only wins was a crap bot. But we saw how well Sporkinok did against Rusty in both their first fights, and it wasn't really going to be a challenge, to be honest. Like, I like Sporkinok, I like Rusty. I love Rusty, to be honest, but it doesn't really seem fair putting him up against something like that. But at least Beta's hammer works. We know that much, at least. That's a start. That's something to see, at least. I'll also say congrats to Captain Shredder for finally getting a win, first time since 2018, and one of only 3 wins they've had in the reboot. One of which was a 2014 death roll, which wasn't exactly stellar, but you know, it wasn't. That fight was basically going to be a lose for either team, because if Axe Backwards won, okay, that's only their second win, and that's only a win over Shredderator, who hadn't won obviously since whenever. And if Shrederator won, that's against Axe Backwards, whose only win is against Ultimo Destructo. So it's both a crap win and a really crap loss as well, because that's not much of a challenge either way, and it doesn't really do a lot to show how good you are to beat them. So I mean, it was a decent fight. The wedge configuration that Axe Backwards came out with was clever. I can absolutely see why they went with that, because it did what they wanted it to do. It did manage to keep Shredder away and allow Axe Backwards to stay reasonably offensive and defensive at the same time. Like when they took the wheel off, it was curtains. Basically, it was Axe Backwards was basically just set up to lose. Really, I did love the bit at the end when Shredder was just spinning. That was just like Invader from series whenever. When he just sat there for at least it was a bit quicker. This was only 45 minutes as opposed to whenever however, I think it was like closer to an hour. Invader was going for. That was mad. That was. The actual favourite fight from this episode was again the main event, Whiplash versus Gruff, because this was always going to be a very, very tactical fight, very sort of back and forth, equal footing fight for the whole way through. And by and large it was. Whiplash had it more. I would say it wasn't quite 50-50, it was more 60-40, 55-45ish. You could swing it, because Whiplash were always going to get damage points. They were always going to have that edge on them. Gruff is built like a fucking tank, so and unless through sheer luck, it was always going to go the distance at the very least. Because I said to myself when I saw the fight card and I saw it was Gruff vs Whiplash, I was like, if it's a KO, it'll be Gruff, because they'll have taken out Whiplash with the power of their own weapon, just using their fist to break their own face. And if it was the judges, it was going to be Whiplash, because they couldn't kill Gruff, which is obviously what happened. It was a bleeding good fight. There was some amazing hits in there right from the very start of it. I didn't quite get what Pete Abramson was saying about talking about how what you saw between Whiplash and Gruff. Slow moving Gruff, like Gruff is not a slouch. It's not a claw viper. It's not across the box in half a second. And against Whiplash, he's going to be a bit slower. But most things are. I'd say Whiplash is one of the fastest ones they've got up there. To be honest, it's like, okay, it's going to be a bit slower. It's bleeding 6-wheel drive compared to 4-wheel drive. And didn't really think how that was going to be majorly effective on it, but yeah, it was a weird point for him to come out and say. And then the bit where put it out there. He had had a wedgelet loose or something like that. Like little details like that's not gonna, in the grand scheme of things, that's not gonna affect Gruff a whole lot really. So didn't quite know what he was getting at there. But like coming into the fight, obviously both of them obviously had stuff to lose and stuff to gain, because Whiplash obviously at 0-1 at this point, but the Sawblades, the loss that they had to Sawblades was a good loss. That was a good fight. That was the best. That was the best we've seen Sawblades perform at in a long time, to be honest. Probably since like the Tombstone fight. And then the win that Gruff had over Hypershock was a bit. I don't really rate Hypershock. Like, I can absolutely see why people like it. Technically, there's a lot going on. It's got the speed, it's got the power. It just doesn't have like the fizz for it. Like, it's done well. It's never made the bracket at all, really. But it is one of those sort of like fan favourite sort of thing. But Hypershock's always been a bit hit and miss for me. Like, I will concede their Bite Force fight was good in whatever series that was. The one they had there, that was probably one of the closest there's times Bite Force has come to being on the ropes, if you could call it that. But yeah, both sort of had a lot to sort of play for, really, because you're either going to go to 1-1 and then 0-2, or both be at 1-1, which is sort of not the ideal one to have an even record like that, because then it's really dependent on the sort of matchups you had. This matchup was really good, because like Gruff's flames are so much more potent this year. Good lord, having the twin flamethrower on either side of them, so that you've got double the streams of it, it's just makes so much more sense. You can just project so much more heat into it and do so much more sort of internal damage and stuff, which you did see towards the end when there's one point where Whiplash were driving Gruff around somewhere and there's just smoke beginning to billow out the back of Whiplash, so they must have done something to them at least. Both were really aggressive very early on, which was really good. Like, straight away it was basically a box rush straight in, both starting to try and take chunks out of each other. The lift that Whiplash got on Gruff right at the start, Gruff comes back over and the underside shot was a beautiful bit of drive. That was a lovely shot that Whiplash managed to get. It was brilliant. The new spinner Whiplash has got, where it's like obviously a lot thinner than their old one. It seems like it's a lot better for them to sort of raise up and down a lot quicker, so they can do. It's the sort of thing of like you're doing smaller bits of damage more frequently compared to bigger hits less often. If you've got the smaller weapon, you can do more hits full stop, because you can just get the armor up and down so much quicker. And it seems like Matt finds it easier to drive and use, because it was a lot more effective than it has been in. Not that I say it wasn't effective in the last season, but like in this one and their other fights, it just seems like they can do a lot more. Like Gruff is really well driven. Sam McCamus is a very good driver, but Whiplash is just Matt Vasquez is top 5 drivers. Absolutely top 5. I'd put Sam in top 10 as well, to be fair. But Whiplash is top 5 drivers at least, because like the bit where they had a Gruff in the corner and Whiplash comes in backwards with the arm sort of flung back over them and just takes a big chunk out of the front of Gruff with the spinner like that, was amazing. Like they had that was just a great bit of driving, because any otherwise you would try and swing it around and try and scoop him up and take him again for it. It was just it was a really good fight. It was a very close match, very sort of like a war of attrition sort of thing, just little chunks here and there from each of them, just trying to batter each other down. Whiplash definitely had the first half of the fight. They were a lot more aggressive, a lot more dominant in that sort of first minute and a half ish. But then Gruff did bring it back a bit in second half. They at the very least they matched Whiplash's level. They were not so easy to take. I think once they lost the flamethrowers, and it's like, right, we've got nothing else to lose for, and just go head on for it. I think that's when it really started to change, because they really started to just drive themselves in, getting lifts on Whiplash. They did nearly manage to get him over at one point, which was really close for him. I thought they might have had it, but yeah, it was really good. It was a very good fun. No contest for judges. It was, even just going on damage alone, it was always going to be Whiplash, because the chunks what they took out the flamethrower and everything like that, put bends and stuff in the lifting forks. Yeah, it was always going to be Whiplash's fight, but it was a really good fight. So yeah, so that's my thoughts on my favourite fight from episode 7 of Battlebots 2020, the main event between Gruff and Whiplash. Leave your comments and stuff down at the bottom. Let me know what, if you agree with me, if this was your favourite fight. What did you think any fight was better? What was your favourite? Let's get some comments going on there. Social media links and stuff will be in the description as well. And I'll see you next time.